When a man falls off a bridge, his family members wonder, was it an accident, a suicide, or does this mystery have a paranormal answer? And then we take a look at the story of a young boy who moved to a new town. It's always hard to make friends when you're the newest kid around. But this boy doesn't have any trouble making friends. In fact, there's friends all over his house. Friends that only he can see. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a ton of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command is one of our long-term legacy Patreon members. Let's give it up for Gregory F. Woohoo! Yeah, he's running on in. He has a giant F on his t-shirt. Woo! Yeah. I don't know why I was catcalling him. Woo! I love Fs. Gregory, last initial F, you are going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the merch store or the Patreon, I totally understand. I really, really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Okay, Gregory, we got a lot to cover today, so let's go ahead and toss you the keys. I'm coming up with some new vehicles. Maybe this is an old one, I don't remember. But, Gregory, I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the Jackrabbit Jet Ski. Everyone, we're all on his shoulders. We're a giant human pyramid balancing on him as Gregory F. fires up the Jackrabbit Jet Ski. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Why don't you ride us all the way out to a bridge? We all fall off. None of us make it there, except Gregory. We all have to swim in the wake of this jet ski. Not the most practical vehicle to carry more than one person. We are all at a bridge. This story is an older story. This involves grandparents of people who are alive today. We don't have an exact time or place for this story, but old-timey, right? How old are your grandparents? My grandparents are all dead, but if they were alive, they'd be in their 80s. So this isn't my grandparents. I don't know why I'm using that as a rule, but I figure, grandparents were probably talking like 60s type of era when this story takes place. We're going to meet a young woman at the time. She's elderly now, but she wasn't born a grandparent. She wasn't a Benjamin Button baby. We're going to meet this young woman. We'll call her Doreen. She has a large family. The other family member we're interested in for this story, her brother, we'll call him Todd. They're adults at this point in their life with adult responsibilities and adult problems. And one of the biggest problems Todd is facing in his life is he's an alcoholic. It really, really can put the skids on a lot of your plans, a lot of your hopes and dreams. When addiction is in play, they all kind of get pushed to the side. You're focused on your drug of choice or activity of choice. Well, family struggled with Todd being an alcoholic. He struggled with being an alcoholic. One day, he left the bar, his bar of choice. See you later, gummy bear, Todd says. He's walking out, the bartender's like, quit calling me gummy bear. I don't know. Those haven't even been invented yet. What's a gummy bear? See you tomorrow. And Todd walks out of the bar. He's pretty sauced up. And where he's trying to get to, he has to cross a bridge to get there. He has to cross a bridge when he's walking home, and on this particular day, his legs are a little more wobbly than normal. His vision more severely blurred. The alcohol coursing through his veins and affecting his judgment, his balance. A little too much to drink on this particular day. Todd walks across the bridge, but only makes it part of the way before he loses his footing and falls off the bridge. That is the Final report on his death. They believe it's an accident. Todd was walking across the bridge like he's done so many times before. This time he fell off. And isn't it interesting to think that a few weeks before this tragic journey, Todd took out life insurance on himself? The insurance does end up paying the policy off. And Todd's family now has a chunk of money that they didn't have before. So what are you implying, Jason? Like this guy, he was walking across the bridge, he had too much to drink, he fell off the bridge, and he died. Are you implying that maybe he said, I'm going to take out an insurance policy on myself and then kill myself in a way that would look like an accident so the policy would pay out? I'm not saying that. Todd's family was saying that. Not to outsiders. They didn't tell the police that they think it was a suicide. They definitely didn't tell the insurance company they think it was a suicide. But as the family members talk to each other, they think Todd had planned this. Todd got the life insurance policy, and then he killed himself in a way that it could have been an accident. Now, some states in the United States, last time I checked, do pay out. There's not a lot. Not a lot of places have this, but they will pay out if you commit suicide. But most places, you can't take out life insurance and then kill yourself and then your family members get the money. Most insurance companies won't pay out like that, so they really try to figure out whether or not it was an accident or a suicide. But this story being so many decades old, and really I think it a lot of times comes down to the police report. If they go, well, we think he fell off the bridge on accident, the insurance company kind of has to go off that. But whatever the case, the family got paid for Todd's death. And they would eventually use that money to buy a new home. Well, new to them. But in the meantime, it's time to bury Todd. The day of Todd's funeral, so it's shortly after he died, the day of Todd's funeral, they're going to have the funeral procession through town. And because just the way that this town was built, the funeral procession is going to drive right by the house they live in right now. They didn't plan it that way, but their house was on a main street in town. The funeral procession, you have all the cars lined up. They're kind of just driving down the road towards the cemetery. The funeral procession is driving down the street when all of a sudden, Doreen's sitting there in a car and she looks out the window and goes, oh my God, look. Stop the car, look. And she's telling people to look, but at this point, everyone's already seen what's going on. They're driving past their house, and their house is on fire. The funeral procession stops, everyone gets out of the car. At this point, other cars driving through the area, they're stopped, and people get out of the car. In an age before cell phones, you're really hoping that one of your neighbors is home, because you're going to have to run over there and use their phone. You're not going to run into your house that's on fire to use the phone. So as firefighters are being called, people, really all they can do is stand there and watch this house on fire. But it's not the whole house that's on fire. Only one room has flames shooting out of the window. That room was Todd's. But again, the way fires work, they do generally start in one location and spread. So they're watching this and they go, oh, Todd's room is on fire for some reason, but surely this fire will quickly sweep through the house and destroy everything in its path. We got to get it put out as soon as possible. The firefighters show up and they begin combating the blaze. They're shooting water into the house, into Todd's room, and they eventually extinguish the fire. After the family gets the go-ahead to go inside, and you want to see, what actually burned, what do we have to deal with here, they do go inside. However, I don't know, this is a very interesting question, did they go inside right then? Because remember, Todd's body is in a car, part of this funeral procession. You were headed to the cemetery. So I don't know if they went in then and just had Todd's body chilling in the back seat of a hearse, or, once the fire's put out and the firefighters give the all clear, do they then continue to the cemetery, finish the funeral, and then go back to your house that caught on fire. It's interesting. Like, what would you do in that situation? We're not entirely for sure how that played out here. The point is though, at one point the family does go into the house to assess the damage. They know that at least Todd's room was on fire, but where else did it go? Nowhere. The fire was completely contained in Todd's bedroom. No other part of the house caught on fire. And when they went into Todd's room to assess the damage, because they know that place, flames were shooting out of the window, they know that place was pretty heavily damaged. When they went in there, nothing in his bedroom had been burned either. Not the bed sheets, not the wallpaper. There weren't black scorch marks on the ceiling. The carpet wasn't gnarled and melted. The bedroom looked unharmed. In fact, if you did not see the flames shooting out of Todd's room and you'd been told there was a fire in this house, you wouldn't be able to tell which room was on fire. Now, I'm assuming the place was soaking wet, right? Because they were shooting water in. There was a fire for the firefighters to put out. There was just no fire damage. But it didn't really matter. The family was going to move out of this house due to this windfall that... I shouldn't say it doesn't matter at all. It's definitely a bizarre event that will lead into future bizarre events. But eventually the family did move away because they had this money. They were going to get a nicer place, a bigger place. The family buys a new home, new to them, with this money. And it doesn't take long before the family realizes this new home they're living in is haunted. There had been reports of people when they're sitting in the bathroom, going to the bathroom, someone would start knocking on the door. You're going to the bathroom, someone knocks at the door, you go, sorry guys, occupied, I'll be out in a second. But at this house, you'd be in the bathroom and it would just keep knocking. Knock, knock, knock. I'm almost done. Knock, 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 knock. Dude! Knock, knock, knock. Come on, you're not making this any easier. My poop is shy. Knock, knock. It's going back inside of me. You're actually making me reverse poop. Knock, knock, knock. Eventually, you would just get so annoyed, you'd get up and open the door to yell at whoever was knocking, and there was no one around. People had multiple encounters in this house. Family members over the years would experience things. Another notable and kind of creepy one was there was one family member that when he spent the night there, I think it was an uncle, when he'd spend the night there, late at night he'd hear people whispering. He'd hear them whispering all night long, all around him. The house was haunted, and everyone in that family who spent more than an afternoon in there would verify that it was haunted. This story was posted online by the grandson of Doreen. He'd been told this story, and multiple people in the house who were living in that new house, aunts and uncles staying the night, mom and dad, all of that, they'd have these paranormal experiences. And they never would have moved to this new house had it not been for the money from Todd's death. And there's a couple different ways to look at this story. I think, they go, we don't know if it was an accident. We're pretty sure it was a suicide. The spectral fire, this fire that is shooting out of his bedroom window, you can look at that. There's a very harsh way to view that as in, and I don't not ascribe to this belief, but I know it is popular in other religions, that people who commit suicide go to hell. That's not something that I believe in. I don't think there's really any biblical backing for that. And it's not a good thing to do, but I don't think that it automatically sends you to hell. I think that could be the connection. He kills himself and his bedroom's on fire. You could see that as a sign that he went to hell. That's not the read I get on this. It's very interesting because the fire itself is real. The firefighters have to be called to put it out. It doesn't just vanish on its own. It doesn't have some bizarre color to it. It's like green flames, and then you hear the devil go, ho, 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 another soul. Like, that doesn't happen. If something was on fire and the firefighters sprayed it with water and it went away. The unique properties of the fire is that it left no damage and didn't spread to other places in the house. But it was also it wasn't a spiritual fire. It wasn't hell flame. The firefighters went and just sprayed some water on it and it went away. I wonder if we talk about an accident, we talk about a suicide. There's another thing that we leave out here in Todd's story. It's possibly a murder, but not human versus human. We don't know what Todd was up to in his bedroom. We don't know what he was up to. It's possible that he summoned some sort of force, some sort of demonic energy, and that is what killed him. I mean, here's the thing. Technically, there's no proof of that. I'm just saying, it's room is on fire and the flame doesn't destroy anything. Definitely has some spiritual properties there. He does die, and I think that if you wanted someone to die and you wanted it to not be investigated, as well as leave the family of the victim forever going, why? What could I have done differently? Maybe I should have tried calling them. If I was an evil demonic entity, I would have a vast landscape of people I killed in a way that made people think it was a suicide. That would be my... What's the word you use? Like the word you use when you make people commit suicide, Jason? It's murder. No, it would be my topping. It would be the cherry on my sundae. If I was a demonic entity, I would constantly be doing that. And I'm wondering if he got involved in some dark magic, some dark ritual, and caused a situation where he was killed. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't suicide, but he was killed. To what end? I mean, again, demons just do stuff to be evil. I do find it very interesting, though, that the money they got from his death put them in a house that was worse off than the house they were in. The house they were in wasn't haunted. The weirdest thing that ever happened there was flames shooting out of somebody's window and left no lasting damage. Then they moved to a house where they were under constant paranormal and ghostly bombardment. And it wasn't always the worst thing, like someone knocking on the door while you go into the bathroom, that's super irritating. But just knowing you're living in a haunted house, there is an element of hopelessness to it. Oh, and I do want to say, too, we do see, you go, Jason, maybe you would just be the most evil demon in the world if you were killing people and making it look like a suicide. We did an episode a long time ago about a demon, I think it was Nebraska or North Dakota, called Walking Sam, who, as he's like a giant, tall, skinny guy, and he has nooses hanging from his arms. It's an old legend about this demon that would make young men kill themselves. And it goes way, way, way back. So we do have in the lore creatures that specialize in inducing suicide. It wouldn't just be a one-off if this guy did it. So yeah, it's very curious. It almost seems like a deal with the devil where you think you're getting something good. You're like, yeah, it sucks that Todd died. He's a beloved member of the family. However, his death has allowed us to move to another place, and then that place is haunted. You just never feel comfortable there. Constantly. I mean, basically, like, everyone in the family had a story, and you always wonder about the stories they're not telling as well. The story that an encounter they had that was so scary, they're like, I'm not going to tell anyone else in the family what happened, because they just won't be able to sleep at night. So, interesting story, and it does still ask what actually happened to Todd on that bridge. The most tragic would be a suicide, obviously. But that's what the family believed. Whether or not that's what it was, they believed he committed suicide. It could have just been an accident. And weird thing. And maybe that flame shooting out the window was some sort of signal. I mean, it's not the best symbol to say, hey, everything's fine, guys. I'm on the other side. I mean, like, if they were driving down the road and they saw Todd golfing, like a ghost of him golfing on the lawn, they're like, oh, that old drunk idiot, he's still alive. We always told him, stop golfing on the lawn. It's not a golf course. But look, there he is. And a little ghost, Todd, is waving to them as he's hitting ghost balls across the neighborhood. I don't think it was a signal from Todd that things are great. It could have either been the end of a ritual that, he wasn't there to finish, but something was appearing, something came out. Who knows, right? It's interesting, the amount of witnesses who saw the flame shooting out the window as well. It wasn't just one person. Everyone in the neighborhood was coming out. Fire engine came out. Firefighters went in and put the fire out. What was really going on in this story? The family will never know. such an old story, and they're still asking for what happened. They still go, we don't know what happened. The grandson's posting this online, being like, we don't know why these events happened the way they did, but this is what happened to my family. And I believe they still own the home. The home that they're in is the haunted one they bought after Todd died. It's interesting. Would you live in a house that was that actively haunted? I think it would get just so overwhelming over time. You wouldn't want people to spend the night anymore. Well, you would, right? You would. I said that wrong. They wouldn't want to spend the night anymore. How long could you live in a house? And when I say how long, you could have a 20-year mortgage. Every time you fall asleep, or even before you fall asleep, you hear voices whispering in the darkness. When you're trying to go to the bathroom, someone's knocking on the door. Like, Jason, those really aren't that. You're like, that's not a big deal. You've covered way worse. People getting possessed by demons and ripping dogs apart. Like, that's not a place you'd want to live for 20 years. That's not a place you'd want to live for 20 minutes. But again, just the constant paranormal interaction. You're like, where's the remote? You're looking for it, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. The ghost exists here, and you see it floating down the hallway. You're like, come back here, Gertrude. You old bag, and it's some ghost ladies floating around with the remote. You gotta get up. You could just get up and change the channel on your television, but no. You're gonna follow the ghost, and you see that it's going down to the basement, and the lights all flickering, and you see the remote floating down there. I mean, at that point, you'd be like, okay, no, I'm good. I'll just buy a new universal remote. The third one I've bought this week. It would get old real fast. It would get really old really fast. The knocking on the bathroom door would drive me insane. That would be like if the CIA ever kidnapped me and put me in some black site prison. They leave the lights on the whole time. I'm like, that's cool. I can sleep with the lights on, and I'm just close my eyes. And they're blasting rock music 24/7. I'm just all dancing. I'm mosh pit. I started a mosh pit with the other inmates. They're like, dude, stop it. I'm like, oh, this music's awesome. They couldn't break me. Waterboarding, I'd be like, well, thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm quite dehydrated from all that dancing I've done for the past 24 hours. And my eyes are all totally bloodshot. I've been staring at the light for so long. Waterboard, yummy, yummy, yummy. I'm all drinking the water. They're like, this guy should have drowned 20 minutes ago. All they'd have to do is say, you know what? You have been, they give me an award, Best Torture Victim 2025. It's like, oh, CIA, I knew you guys weren't all bad. They give me this little trophy. And then they go, well, you know what? You've been tortured so well this past couple weeks. We'll let you use the bathroom. We've only been letting you use that bucket in the corner of your room. And oddly enough, you weren't using the bucket. You were just pooping everywhere. Here, we'll let you use a real bathroom. And they lead me to like the staff bathroom. And it's all clean. I was like, where's the bucket? Where's the bucket, guys? And they're like, oh, no. You get to sit on the toilet. I was like, oh, I forgot about these things. And then I sit on the toilet, and they're like, okay, we're going to leave you. And then they just start knocking on the door. I'm like, I'm in here. I'm using the toilet. And they keep knocking. I'm like, I'll tell you whatever you want, man. I'll tell you whatever you want. Just let me poop in peace. That would irritate me to no end. Because, I like to just go to the bathroom. I don't like to be bugged. But anyways, that would be the worst thing for me. I'm living next door to the guy who rips dogs in half. I was like, oh man, dude, think we can swap places? You can come stay at my place. I got a lot of dogs here. I just need to go to the bathroom in peace. Gregory F., let's go ahead and toss you the keys of the world. Famous Carpenter Copter, we're saying goodbye to this haunted house with the most annoying bathroom on the planet. Why don't you fly us all the way out to a small neighborhood. We're headed all the way out to the small neighborhood. We don't know exactly where the story takes place, but it does not take place in America. We know that for a fact. So anywhere else but the United States is where this story takes place. We're about to meet a young man, or his whole family actually. We're about to meet this young family that's moving into a new neighborhood. But the family member we're going to focus the most attention on is a young boy. We will call him Frank. He's 7, 8 years old during the events of this story. So he's a little guy, and his family moves into this new area, and it's not a super populated neighborhood. Where Frank's house is, the houses on either side of them are both empty. No one's moved in there yet. And to add to the creep level, I mean, that's not super creepy to kind of just live with no neighbors on the other side of you. But just a couple of plots away from that, there's a graveyard. That is creepy. That would be creepy for pretty much anyone, kid or adult. And for the first few months in this new house, everything's going great. Frank has a cousin, we're going to call him Jim, who also is a major player in this story. And the cousin is over at Frank's house pretty regularly. The cousin's also older. I think he's like at early teens. One day, Jim is hanging out over at Frank's house with some buddies of his. Jim brings his friends over. Jim lives in the area, but not one of the next door houses. He just lives nearby, and he does come over quite a lot. Jim is hanging out with his friends who are older. They go to Frank's house and they're chatting. Jim goes, hey Frank, how's everything going here? Oh, that's going great, man. I know we just moved here, but, I've actually started hanging out with some of the local guys. It's really, really cool. Jim goes, oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I was a little concerned, sometimes it can take a while to make friends, but you've already made a bunch of friends. Frank's like, dude, I've made some awesome friends. This is a really cool area. And that makes Jim feel good because, again, that it can be hard to make friends. And when you're younger, it's always good to have that peer group around. He goes, okay, cool. Frank's going to fit in here. But as Frank began talking about his friends, Jim is curious to say the least. When Frank talks about his friends that he's hanging out with, he tells Jim, he goes, yeah, I got the best friend that I made is this guy named Arrul. He's a really cool guy. He's really awesome. And Jim's like, what? Arrul, man. Arrul, that's his name. And Jim thinks, people have weird names all the time, but I've never heard of anyone ever named Arrul. It's odd. Odd choice of a name. Now, Frank's family and Jim's family, because they're all related, they're a Muslim family, and they live in a Muslim culture. I don't know at what part of the world it's in, but Jim says, you know what, we're all Muslim. That's not a name that is normal for our culture or for our region. I've never heard of the name Arrul before. But as Frank continues to talk about Arrul, Frank goes, yeah, it's not just Arrul though. He's my best friend, but Arrul's family lives here as well. You have Barrul, Kairul, Sharul, and Farameen. They're all siblings. We all hang out together. Now Jim's thinking, is he making these names up? Like, those aren't real names. I've never heard anyone named... First off, why did all the names rhyme? That's weird, but then one doesn't. None of the names make any sense. So, it was kind of breaking Jim's heart a bit. He's going, is Frank just, have imaginary friends? He's almost 10 years old. That's little kid stuff. Made him feel kind of bad. He goes, oh, he must not have any real friends. He has these imaginary friends. But what would happen, again, this story's taking place over a period of time. Jim would come over and hang out at Frank's house. And Frank would say, oh, I had the most fun. I was hanging out with Arrul the other day, and it was great. He has this trick. That he does. And Jim goes like, what? What's his trick? What trick can an imaginary friend do? He didn't straight up call him an imaginary friend, but he's thinking, what? Frank goes, yeah, it's really cool. Sometimes Arrul, he can get inside my toy cars and he drives them around the house. Jim's like, what? Those over there, those Hot Wheels, those little tiny cars. Yeah. Sometimes Arrul, he just gets inside the car and he drives it around the house. Isn't that awesome? Can your friends do that? And Jim, he's now moving from, oh, I feel bad for my cousin, he doesn't have any friends, to wait a second. My cousin, although he may not have any friends, he's not an idiot. He knows that a toy car cannot drive on its own. And he definitely knows that I know that they can't drive on their own. So I don't know why he's trying to tell me that sometimes his Hot Wheels drive around by themselves. Because he's adamant that Arrul can do this. He can hop in a Hot Wheel and drive it around the house. And Jim starts to get a little concerned. He goes, it might not just be that my cousin doesn't have any friends. It's possible that my cousin's going crazy. Because he's old enough to know that's impossible. But Frank acted like it was totally normal. Oh, yeah, no, it's really cool. Arrul can do that. Maybe sometime when you're over, I'll have him show you. Yeah, Frank, yeah. Next time I'm over, maybe I'll meet him. Frank is constantly talking about Arrul and Ba Arrul and Kai Arrul and all these guys, and he's saying that they're constantly coming over the house to hang out. Everyone in the family goes, Frank is having some imaginary friends, and honestly, it's getting a little weird, because he's constantly talking about them. He's not hanging out with any kids his own age. Luckily, we have a cousin that can come over and kind of hang out with them, but what is up with all this imaginary friend stuff? A kid is a kid, he's going to have these things, but he's really going in on this. However, when other people who were living in that house, mom, grandma, grandpa, they're all living there, when they start seeing people just out of the corner of their eye, they turn and they look and there's no one there. But I swear someone was just standing there, watching me. But it must have just been my imagination. One day, Jim's mom was in the house and she saw her mother, Frank's grandma, walk out of the bedroom. And she goes, oh, okay. See grandma walk out, not a big deal. But then, shortly after that, she sees her mother walk out of a different room. Now the family is really starting to think, is there something more to Frank's imaginary friends? What if they're not so imaginary after all? At this point, Frank is spending long periods of time in his bedroom. And when other family members were walking by the door, you would hear him talking to people. They'd hear him talking to himself with those pauses as if someone was responding to them and he would continue on. You'd also hear him burst out in laughter in his room, and he was the only one in there. He was just spending long periods of time in his bedroom laughing and talking. It was around this time where Frank told his cousin Jim, there's good news since the last time I saw you, cousin. Guess what? And Jim is like, I don't know, a little ghost guy, one of your friends did something fascinating and beyond reality. But it's not going to happen while I'm here. And Frank goes, no, close, but no. Actually, since the last time I saw you, Arrul and his whole family have moved into the house. I see him all the time now. Isn't that awesome? All of my friends live here with me. What more could a boy ask for? This is the point where Frank's family goes, listen, we've been really patient with all this imaginary friend stuff. To be sure, we thought it was an imaginary friend at first. But now, we're seeing it. We're seeing people walk around the house that aren't supposed to be here. The kid's locked in the room all day long, just talking and laughing. Which normally would be a good thing, right? They're not like, no laughter in this house. No, it's a kid having fun, but with everything combined, now he's saying the family moved in. I mean, listen, this has gone a little bit beyond our control. In fact, we didn't think anything was wrong in the beginning, and now look what's going on. So they do get a mom. They do go get a mom, and they say, hey, listen, we got to tell you what's going on in our house. We think that there are spirits here. I don't know if they ever specifically used the word jinn. But they said, we got some stuff going on in our house. We think some spirits, maybe jinn. Again, they didn't specifically use that word, but they're interacting with our kid. He's acting like they're completely real. He says they've moved into the house, and we've all seen things just out of the corner of our eye. And then one day I saw an adult woman walk by. I thought it was grandma, and it wasn't. And the mom is sitting there listening to this, and he's like, okay, obviously you have something going on in your house. There's just way too many things happening. I will come out to your house, see what I can do. So according to Jim, he's the one who posted this story online underneath the name Reasonable Air 3580. He goes, the imam did end up coming over to the house, and he started off by performing a ritual of sorts. Then the imam started to recite verses from the Quran. And he did it in every single room in the house. Once he finished that, he got done with that, he went to all the rooms and he was reciting these verses. He tells the family, I'm going to come back tomorrow. We're going to have to do this all over again. Family's like, okay, yeah, no, anything you need to do. So that happened. The next day, the imam comes over, he performs this ritual, then he begins reading Quranic verses. In each room of the house, says, I'm going to have to come back tomorrow. We have to keep doing this. So he does. He does this for multiple days in a row. Until finally he goes, okay, I've done what I can do right now, but it's not over. It's almost like an infestation at this point. It's not like you can come and just do this one ritual, read the verses, and they leave. They're sticking around. And he goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this recording of Quranic verses. And every single day you need to play this recording in each room in your house. This is a sticky paranormal entity, or entities, really. And family goes, we're going to do whatever we need to do. Because here's the thing, if a professional religious cleric, if a professional man of the cloth, a faith leader, comes to your house and performs this ritual and has to do it multiple days in a row, and he's like, you still got an uphill battle, you go, well, the alternative is that we didn't do anything, and whatever here is so powerful, it was only going to get worse. So they said, yeah, we'll do that. So they began to do that. Every single day they'd have this recording of these Quranic verses. They'd play it in the different rooms. And after a while of them doing this, the family stopped seeing things out of the corner of their eyes. But Frank still talks to Arrul. Jim knows what's going on. I don't know if they specifically told Frank, hey, we're trying to perform an exorcism against all of your friends. They got to leave. They're scaring us. I don't know how much they actually told Frank about what was going on. But Jim talked to him about it. And Jim goes, so, wait a second, you're still talking to Arrul? He's thinking, shouldn't have all of this stuff has worked? The family stopped seeing these spectral figures standing just out of view. Frank goes, yeah, I still talk to Arrul, but his family left. His family left. They don't live here anymore. Arrul does, though. Well, where did they go? Oh, yeah, no, they left. They moved to America. They went to America. They didn't like all of this Quran verses that were being played in the house. They thought it was kind of a bummer. So they left to America, but Arrul stuck around. And Jim goes, like, is he not having an aversion to the verses from the Quran being played? I mean, if his family left, he's sticking around, and, like, how is that even possible? Why is he doing that? And Frank goes, actually, no, he doesn't like it either, right? But he doesn't want to leave. So when they start playing the verses, he goes and he hides in the cupboard in grandparents' room. He crawls up in there and hides until they stop playing the recording, and then he crawls back out, and he's my friend again. A very sticky paranormal entity. When these recordings have driven off the rest of his quote-unquote family to America, and we'll discuss that in a second, he stuck around. One night, it was around 2 a.m, Frank's parents are in their bedroom, they're having a big argument. And it's getting really heated. Neither side wants to back down. Both sides think that they're right. And it gets to the point where the mom, she gets so mad at what her husband is saying, she turns her back on him in protest. She just turns away from him. And that's when she sees something. She sees a young boy staring at her through the window. She's looking right outside into the late night darkness, and she sees there's a boy watching her from outside. Mom immediately goes silent, right? She was in this big argument. She turned her back to her husband. But when she sees this kid, she just stops talking. And Dad, who is also in the middle of this huge argument, when he realizes that he's the only one talking, he finds that very odd, because this isn't the first argument they've had. When he realizes his wife isn't saying anything, he looks to see what caused her to stop talking so suddenly. He also sees the boy standing outside the window. They said that this boy, you could obviously tell it was a young kid, looked completely normal. It looked like a normal boy, except for the fact that it had unusually large eyes. But other than that, everything about it looked human. They also said that the expression the boy had on his face was a uh-oh expression. As in, uh-oh, they're looking right at me. Right? They obviously see me. They weren't supposed to notice I was here. Uh-oh. Now, in the moment, Mom and Dad are watching this. They see this boy outside the window, and you could, and I'm sure a lot of things pass through their head immediately. Was this a lost child? Was it a peeping Tom? They knew it wasn't a peeping Tom, or a lost kid, or a neighbor, or anything like that. They knew it for a fact because once they overcame being startled by seeing this young boy standing out their bedroom window, they knew it had to be Arrul himself for one reason. Their bedroom was on the second story of that house. They moved very shortly after Mom and Dad saw this hovering child right outside their bedroom window. They were like, nope, listen, we've really tried playing the recordings. It turns out they worked on his family, but not on him. We're just going to move. We're going to leave. So they did. They got a new home. They packed everything up. They moved to another home. And almost right after they moved into the new home, very, very, very shortly, once that move was complete, Frank completely forgot that any of this ever happened. Jim said it was like watching someone get their memory wiped. He goes, it was so weird. He had zero recollection of any of this stuff right after they moved into the new house. This all hinged on Frank interacting with Arrul. All of it was because of this friendship. He doesn't remember any of it. To this day, he has no memory of any of the events that happened at that house. About the time he was best friends with an entity that had dark intentions for his entire family. It's an interesting story, I think, for a couple reasons. The memory wipe we're used to. We've talked about that a lot on the show. It's very interesting how the mind will very quickly make you forget paranormal entities. You have this idea of this boy, like how much of it was driven by this kid. Was it something where the kid invited them in? Yeah, you guys can live here. That'd be awesome. And then all the spirits piggybacked on that request. Were they constantly trying to get in and he was their ticket? What was their end goal? Was it just the destruction of this family? Who knows? You know, I say it had dark intentions because obviously if you have a spirit that's in a house and it doesn't like the Quran, it doesn't like the Bible, it doesn't like the Torah, you kind of have to go, this dude probably has some pretty bad intentions. If you're reading these holy texts, you go, it probably works for a reason, right? Generally, if a snake is slithering around in your house, well, that does have bad intentions, but maybe it's just really cold outside, if you broke out the Bible and started reading Bible verses, the snake's not going to turn to dust. The snake's going to do what snakes do. I mean, it might bite you, it might not. But it's not designed to be evil. Like, that's really, Jason, isn't that the whole first book of the Bible? Okay, maybe snake was a bad example. But my point is that, you know, if I wonder, actually, this is a good point. Not a good point, it's a good idea. I wonder what would happen if you read the Bible to Bigfoot. If that would, like, work on him. Is it like a charm? Because people will pray or say Jesus Christ in front of aliens, the gray aliens supposedly disappear. I wonder what Bigfoot would have to do with that. There is that conspiracy theory that Bigfoot is actually Cain from the Bible. It was one of our most famous episodes. You're like, yeah, Jason, I think you've already covered that multiple times. Fun stuff. But what I also think is really interesting about the story is, one, think about how fragile it is if even a kid can invite these dark demons into your home. I mean, that would suck because kids say dumb stuff all the time. If that was the case, every home would be haunted because a little ghost girl would be like, I want to play with you. I'll play all the tea parties. And then the living girl's like, yeah, sure, why don't you come on over? You can live here, actually. Right? Every home would be infested with demons. Can a kid speak for the whole family when it comes to inviting spirits into the home? We have all these questions. But what I think is absolutely notable about this story, because this is a conspiracy theory, I don't even remember what episode we covered it on. I'll try to find it. But there has been at least one other, and I think we found more. I think there's been 2 or 3 stories we've covered about Jinn specifically traveling to America. We've found that in other stories. We've covered that before, where I remember one of them was that there's a conspiracy theory that very, very rich and powerful Muslim men from the Middle East are shipping jinns to the United States. They're like, they've used this power to become very wealthy in the Mideast. Now they want to use this dark force to become even more powerful in America. Something like that. And they were shipping them over, and I'm trying to remember if they were shipping them over for their own personal benefit or if they were shipping them over to be weapons against their enemies in America, or both. But this is not the first time we've come across this on this show, of Jinn traveling to America. Super bizarre when you step back and look at it. That wasn't even the focus of this story. That was almost like a side note. But because we've talked about it before on the show, I go, what is up with this idea? Because you never hear about angels going, you know what? Let's go hang out in Bolivia for a while. It's kind of just a given that angels are everywhere. If you believe in angelic forces, that they're everywhere. What is it about America that seems to be attracting Jinn? They were playing the Quran, and instead of these, and I don't know if these were Jinn, they didn't use that term, but they were definitely spirits that didn't have the best of motives for this family. Instead of going, being like, oh man, we don't want to hear these verses, they could have just said, let's go 8 blocks away to this other house. Who doesn't? They have kids? Oh, that's perfect. Let's go to this other house that's not doing this, or to another city, or to another country in the Middle East, or wherever the story took place. Europe, Middle East, Asia, wherever. They said, we are going to America to get away from this. And again, I think this is the 3rd or 4th time we've covered it, and it's always almost incidental. It's like part of a bigger story where someone says, yeah, and then they shipped the Jinn to America to do X, Y, and Z, and that wasn't even the main purpose of the story. So you keep running into these weird elements in these stories. There probably is something going on there. But why America? Why specifically America? Weird. I don't know. I mean, it's weird. They could go anywhere. They're not locked into any region. They're not even locked into any culture. Why do they keep coming to America? And I can't even speculate. I don't even have and then maybe, because I don't know either. But I read the story and I thought it was really interesting. The idea of a ghost being interpreted as an imaginary friend to the family members is very part of the lore. You see that happening a lot with kids and ghosts. And then you have the idea that one of them was powerful enough to evade the Quranic verses driving off the rest of his family. Even a family of demons or jinn or ghosts is odd enough. Were those their real names? Was that a name they were using? It's very interesting they were using names not of the local culture. That's what kind of cued Jim off in the beginning. He goes, what? Why do they have such weird names? But he goes, my cousin just making it up. It's imaginary, so who knows what their names are. But were those their actual spirit names, their jinn names? Why was one strong enough to stay behind, but it had to hide in the cupboard? What was it about that cupboard that gave it protection against the verses of the Quran on the recording? Absolutely bizarre. There's so much speculation. But I wonder, they came to America and then what? And there's a bunch of them over here, right? Because we've come across this quite a few times of jinn specifically coming to the United States. And each time it's kind of in passing. It's just a smaller part of a bigger story, a bigger ghost encounter, a jinn encounter, what have you. I mean, again, I'd say maybe it's because, America has a stronger Catholic Protestant bent historically. So a jinn in America, in a place that they deal with Western angels and demons, will a Catholic exorcism work on a jinn? Will an Islamic ritual work on a Western demon? We've talked about that on the show. We don't know. Is it like spraying bug spray, but what the pest actually is a rodent? Because it's two completely different things. So that could be why they're coming to America. But again, they could go almost anywhere in the world. And there wouldn't be people if they went to South America, how many Muslim clerics in South America would know how to perform these rituals to defeat a jinn? They would also be very steeped in Catholicism. Weird story. This is why I love doing this show, is finding these things and going like, what? When I saw that sentence, and the rest of them went to America, I go, I gotta cover this, right? It's so weird, because we've covered it a couple times, and I do love doing this show, and I love finding this stuff for you, and sometimes, though, we just gotta shrug our shoulders, though, and go, I don't know why. I don't know. I have no idea. As a conspiracy theorist and a paranormal researcher, I don't know what's so attractive about the United States to the jinn. They do keep showing up, either invited or on their own. I have no idea what that means or what their end game is. And hopefully we never find out. Because whatever it is, it's not good for anybody. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today.